Tom wants to know if I could do a real quick example of a permission check. Yes, I can, although this will change, the API for this will change rather dramatically in the new version of Concrete, although we will try and maintain some backward compatibility. So what we're going to want to do, let's say we came to this page not as the administrator user, but as just a regular user. So I'm going to add a user to this site. And I'm not going to put him in any groups. And then I'm going to sign in as this user. If I come to favorite color, I haven't actually chosen one yet. Since I'm not logged in as someone with access to, the admin toolbar, I actually don't get I'm going to get a JavaScript error because I don't have a color picker. The color picker JavaScript isn't actually being added. So let's add it. Concrete5 includes a function called add header item, which if you run it in the controller, should add a header item to the page that you're working with. The color picker is part of jQuery UI. jQuery is automatically added to this theme. So what we're going to do, but jQuery UI is not. So what we're first going to do is we're going to instantiate the HTML helper. And we're probably going to want to do this in the onStart method as well. We're going to want to run the JavaScript method in the HTML helper, and we're going to want to make sure that jQuery.js and jQueryUI.js are included. And finally, that jQueryUI.css is also included. So let's try this, see if that helps. Did not help. Let's take a look. Those seem to be working fairly well. Let's try adding these to the footer instead. No. Oh, jQuery.colorPicker is actually its own function, or its own JavaScript library, which I did not know or forgot. So what we're going to do instead is we are going to go into CCM app, and we're going to take this and we're going to drop it into the local JS directory. And we're going to load it that way. And let's make sure that we don't also need to add looks like we need to add CCM color picker as well. Okay, that looks a bit better. Much better. So something to be on the lookout for. If you're logged in with someone who has edit bar access, you're going to have a bunch of JavaScript libraries automatically loaded, but you want to make sure that you test everything with users who don't have edit bar access so that you optionally add in all the proper CSS and JavaScript. Okay, so now that that's working again, let's test. Let's only display the file upload for users who have access to add files to the file manager. So what we want to do that, and actually let's do that with, let's do this for users who have access to add files to the favorite color picks set. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this in an if statement. If can add files to set, we show the file right there. If I refresh this page, I don't get the input because I haven't defined this as true. So now we are going to, in onStart, we are going to set this up. File set, get by name favorite color picks, FSP, new permissions, FS. So now let's output what this looks like. Oops. File set, class not found. That's because I have to make sure that I load up my model for file set. Since it's running in onStart now, I can remove it from over here. So now you'll see I have a permissions object. And the permissions object is kind of generic. This is all being refactored in a much nicer way in the next version of concrete5, but these should all still work. If I open up my permissions object, let's remind ourselves of the method, can add files. So this set can add files to set. So now if I refresh this, I get nothing because I don't believe test user has the ability to add files to that set. However, let's try logging in as admin with a different browser. Oops. My wrong demo site. And let's try giving that user access to add files to this set. So I'm going to add test user to my list. Now, if I refresh this as test user, I do in fact get the file uploadability. And moreover, I can actually add this here as well. It's going to require a little bit of reworking. Let's move my file set up here. If FSP can add files, now we are going to run this code. So now you can see the moment we try to run update color, first we check to see if the user has the permission to upload files. If they do, we run through the file upload routine. Then we run through just setting the color. Oops. Oh, looks like I'm uploading a ping that is having problems, or a GIF or something. Interesting. We'll try uploading this file instead. My color is saved successfully, and then if I go into the file manager, thumbnail.ping is the file that I just uploaded. And you can see that if I go into properties, it was added by test user, not the admin user. And then if I go into my users, if I go into test user, you can see that their favorite color picture is thumbnail.png. So that's a super simple, that's a quick sort of primer on how you would check file permissions in that particular set. And you know, you don't have to necessarily, you don't have to do them against a particular set. You could, instead of passing the file set to the permissions object to get FSP, you could also say FSP equals file permissions get global. That will get the global file permissions that are set, file permissions that are set here. And again, that can be users or groups. Does anyone have any questions before we talk a little bit about packages and wrap up? Faust, that is a good clarification. So the question about cleaning, yeah, I should have probably picked up on what you were asking too. The question about cleaning post data is actually about sanitizing XXX is cross-site scripting. No, we kind of make that up to you. We do try to run we do try to clean up some of that stuff in certain spots, but it's generally up to you to run HTML entities on the items that you do. So the form helpers do attempt to run the sanitize their data. Obviously, if there's no sanitizing happening at the controller level or at the view level, but if you use form helpers, we do try some sanitizing, as you can see here in this process request value function. So yes, on the form helpers, but there are a lot of spots where and one other thing to actually note, you will want to sanitize data if you're passing it in yourself. So this sanitizes on the post or the get, sort of that automatic, when you change the value of a form and resubmit it, that's when we do our sanitizing. But if you're getting value from a database and you want to place it into a form, it's sort of up to you to pass it through sanitize. Now, ideally, it would never make it into the database unsanitized, so, but that's just something to note. It doesn't happen completely at the view layer. It only happens on the post. Oscar wonders, will user permissions override a group's permissions? No, what happens is we compute the total permissions that a user has access to combined. So if a user has access to read part of a site, this is true for all the different permissions. If a user has access to read part of a site because they're in group A, access to read part of a site because they're in group B, and then access to read part of the site because they are a specific user, all those permissions will be combined together and they'll get access to parts A, B, and C. User permissions are just simply a way to give a particular set of permissions to one user as opposed to having to create a group and place just one user into it. We don't, currently in concrete5, you can't do denials. So permissions are all opt-in and add up, basically. You can't say test user can't see this page. Now that is changed in the next version of concrete5. You can deny access and give access, and denials take precedence over allows. So you could definitely say everyone has access, everyone in the administrators group has access to view this page and edit it, except Tom. Tom can't edit it, but he can still view it. And that's currently not available in advanced permissions. But if you check out the 553/devel branch in GitHub, which is actually going to be concrete5.6. You can see how that's coming together. Advanced permissions have changed in a pretty fundamental way, and they're a lot more powerful and a lot better architected too. So definitely check those out if you want to see some more permissions excitement in concrete5. If you wanted to do that with permissions, that would just be how our permissions work today. So, if you add a user as someone who can do an action, that user will be able to do that. So, I didn't remember that there was actually a person in this training named Tom. That was just a name that I pulled out of my hat, which is funny that there actually is. Tom asks, is there going to be an advanced application development course upcoming, and is it part of this series? Yes, there is. I don't recall exactly when it is, but it is coming. That's funny. Anyway, before we lose too much of the rest of the time, I want to go over the concept of packages in concrete5. This is a bit we go through a bit more of this in advanced application development, but packages are something you should at least be somewhat familiar with. Most of you probably are to some degree, because packages are the format through which all of our marketplace stuff gets distributed, whether it's free or paid or whatever. Packages are a way of bundling up blocks, themes, single pages, controllers, models, libraries. Basically, almost everything in concrete5 can be packaged up into a bundle of code that you can place in the packages directory and then install. And so I'm going to show you a simple example. My packages directory is currently empty. If I go to my desktop and take a package that I downloaded before and put it in here. This is the example FAQ add-on. It is a free add-on in the marketplace. It also has a how-to attached to it. If you find yourself wanting to do more application development, I highly recommend checking out this add-on. It's not terribly powerful, but it's meant to be sort of a learning tool as to single pages and using concrete5 as more as an application framework. And we get into how this add-on works at a specific level in the next training. There's a fairly beefy how-to about it as well. But for right now, I'm going to install this add-on. I can go down to the install link and extend concrete5. See example FAQ is here. You can, if we open this up, you can see it sort of looks like a mini concrete5 file system. There's a blocks directory with page list and a custom template called example FAQ page list. There is a controller. This is the file that takes care of actually installing and uninstalling and setting a version for the add-on. And then you can see we have a single page that we're adding and a controller that we're adding. And that's really what we have here. It's a custom template, a single page, and a controller. And if I open up controller.php at the root, we can walk through what makes this package tick. Much like single page controllers, controllers for a package are a class. They follow the same naming, except they end with package as opposed and extend the package class. Some required variables in here are the handle of the package, which is just the name, the short name of the folder here, example underscore FAQ, the minimum version of concrete5 that is required, and then the version of the package itself. Then we define a description and a name for a package. And then the last thing that a package needs, although they don't always need this, an install method. And we run parent install. That gets us a package object. And then we take care of installing a few things. So this package installs a couple different attributes. These are page attributes like FAQ section, FAQ tags. And then we install a single page programmatically. So this is basically installing a single page from the single pages interface here, except when it's installed, it adds a second parameter called pkg, which is the package object that is installed at the first part of this line. And you'll notice pkg is passed through in pretty much everything that it is installed, that installs with this package, because everything in concrete5 that can be installed via a package, it will take a package object in one of its installation methods, because we need to keep track of what package installed that object so we know where to look. So when this dashboard example FAQ single page gets added and then gets updated to be named FAQ entries, if we just installed that single page without telling that concrete5 that it was part of a package, it would look for the template files in the root of your concrete5 install, and it wouldn't find anything because they're not there. They're actually found within the example FAQ folder. So let's take care of installing this package. If I hit install there, you can see this package has been installed. If I edit this and uninstall, you can see that concrete5 knows what items were added by this package. That's another side benefit toward making sure that you pass the package object there. I can uninstall this and it will actually take care of removing the single page, removing the attributes, etc. So now when I go over my dashboard, you can see I have FAQ entries listed down here. That's because the dashboard dropdown and the dashboard page here as well knows that it takes care of building this list based on the pages found at a particular section of the site. And since we've added a single page underneath the dashboard node, we have added to our dashboard already. And you can do this from within your concrete5 site as well. So now when I go into the dashboard example FAQ, my single page looks like the dashboard. So this is how packages and custom extensions to your site, single pages in the dashboard, this is how you make a dashboard page. You just make a single page that's found underneath the dashboard section of your site, and it will automatically get the dashboard theme. I think I may actually have the non-updated version of this add-on that is not does not look at its best in concrete5.5, but you can kind of see, and we'll walk through this in the next training, the advanced application development training. This is it's just a single page, just the same way as before. That actually takes care of adding FAQ entries, that it actually adds new pages to your concrete5 site all through a form. And the example FAQ page here in the concrete5 marketplace links over to this how-to, which should be a pretty exhaustive explanation as to how, well, that's too bad, as to how how this works, these types of things. So it's going to go over some of the same stuff that we have talked about today. But hopefully it'll be a lot easier to understand because you took the course today. So at this point, for any further study, I would totally recommend taking a look at the example FAQ add-on, especially since we are going to go through it in the next training. It'll probably make it easier to understand. There's a lot that's going on in it, from sorting and searching of data, um, custom creation of pages through through a form, etc. Ah, this is a good question. As you might imagine, from looking at these screenshots, um, this is from a fairly an older version of concrete5. I believe this was 5.4. Faust asks, I took a look at the example FAQ add-on along with the single-page how-to. Based on that example, it was unclear to me when to use Composer versus single-page applications. It's a very good question. One answer to this question as to why it seems like we may have duplicated some functionality is Composer actually came along after this how-to. So we found ourselves, so basically concrete5 used to simply be the add interface from the page and from within the sitemap, which is certainly very powerful and very in context, but it's not the fastest interface when you're trying to publish content. Plus, it didn't really have a lot of built-in support for previewing content and drafts and things like that. And so add-on developers created single-page editing interfaces like the example FAQ add-on and like the kind we're building in these in this course. They created custom interfaces for blogging in their add-ons, which were all single-page powered, and as a way to customize the experience of adding new content in the concrete5 site through in a more blog style, a way that would be more feel more like a blog. And we saw that, and we realized that there was a little bit of a hole in concrete5, which was there was no way to the drafting process and the writing process of writing longer form content wasn't as graceful. It wasn't you couldn't start something and draft it for a while. It didn't have any auto save, that kind of stuff. So that's when we prototyped Composer, which is a way to build these interfaces from concrete5 blocks and components automatically all through the dashboard. And that's pretty much what it is for. And so the answer really is, if you can populate all the content you need to populate through Composer and all those types work, Composer is absolutely a better choice than building your own single-page editing interface. And to truth be told, the example FAQ add-on is probably more suited to Composer than it would be otherwise. And one reason for that is because we prototyped, Composer was built out of a lot of this work that we did on stuff like example FAQ. However, if you need any sort of custom logic, so for example, example FAQ, you can add an attribute to different parts of your site, which will determine what pages show up as published locations. In Composer, you can choose based on page type, but you can't choose based on an attribute. You can't say, I want to be able to publish to these 3 different FAQ sections that have a checkbox, and they're all different page types, but they're all FAQ sections. That's how example FAQ works. Composer doesn't have an option for that. So You know, if you wanted to build it with Composer, you would have to make sure that all your FAQ sections um, were of the same page types. It's not a huge deal, but you lose some of that flexibility. So the answer really is, if you, the moment you need any kind of custom display, I mean, Composer's display is, you know, attractive, but fairly, it's fixed. If you need any kind of custom display or any kind of you know, help text or custom widgets for different stuff, or you want to save attributes in certain special ways, or do the kind of thing that we did today where we associate images with user accounts, that's when you're going to want to go the custom single page route. But the example FAQ add-on is really, these days, you know, 90% of that functionality is in fact covered by Composer. Yeah, e-commerce is probably not the best. I mean, it's I would say it's the most powerful the most powerful add-on that's in the marketplace, and definitely an example of the types of larger things that you can build with concrete5. But in terms of being something that you can understand easily, it is definitely not that. Let's take a look in the applications category. Let's see. Let's do core team only. You know, I would say that the contact directory um, is not a bad example of something along those lines, um, because it adds some single pages. It does custom processing to CSV files that you upload, and that data then interacts with custom blocks that you can place on the site. Um, let's take a look, see if we don't have, in fact, some free applications that might be useful. Um, I would definitely recommend the contact directory. Um, let's take a look at this one. That's not a very good one. The MailChimp one is fairly impressive. That's probably a bit, that might be a little bit more outside the outside of what can be easily understood, but it's free, and I would definitely you can definitely give that one a spin. Add multiple pages as well is probably a good one to do. So, you know, I would definitely, you know, I would check out the applications category um, in the marketplace. Uh, if you want one that I would recommend, I would definitely say the contact directory is a good one to. It's a little bit getting your feet wet, and then there are some free ones that are not bad starting points. Definitely, this Mail Monkey is a good one for just seeing how much can be done within the package format. Does anyone else have any more questions before we wrap this training up? Well then, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure doing this training for everybody here. I would recommend the advanced application development if you want to continue down this course. In that particular course, we talk a bit about searching and sorting data, including pages and files and users. concrete5 has the database item list class, which our user list and page list functions extend, our classes extend. So it's You'll see it all over the place. You'll see it in the example FAQ section. We go through filtering data by attributes. We talk a bit more about programmatically adding pages and concrete5 events, so which are not not meetups. They're actually events in concrete5 are basically when different stuff happens in your site, events fire, and you can actually hook into those and run custom code when a page is added, for example. Um, and we do all kinds of advanced stuff, and I would highly recommend it. And we will, yes, we will talk a bit about using multiple databases with single pages as well. It's not super transparent, but it is possible to swap database connections in mid-controller and model and then swap back. All right, thanks everybody. Hope to talk to you all again soon.